This episode is brought to you by the Pelora Group.
Welcome back to Winning Through Culture.
I'm Tim Flanagan.
And I'm Amanda Kramer.
When culture's not a priority, people aren't a priority. Having an intentional focus helps you as a leader remain impactful and relevant as you move your business forward.
Welcome to Winning Through Culture.
Davin Salvagno, it is wonderful to be with you today. And just a little backstory on how we met and what got us here today. So you came to my C12 group earlier this year. I guess it was March.
It was March.
Yeah, it was March. And we were told we were going to have a guest. You and I had the immediate connection to Philly, which was kind of cool. You're a South Philly guy. And I was just super impressed with the story and who you are as a person that you shared with us about the Purpose Summit, which is something we're going to talk about today, and something you were bringing to Charlotte for the first time. It was just a really great, perfectly timed, God's timing type thing, I think, for me and our group that day, to be able to welcome you in and to hear your story, which I really want to take a deep dive into today on our podcast here, Winning Through Culture. So welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Amanda and I had an opportunity to go to the Purpose Summit, which we'll talk more about in a moment. We had an opportunity to experience and meet some great people. I had a great opportunity to actually take my daughter with me, which was also very cool, and really profound work you're doing. And I know you've been on a journey. You're a speaker. You're an author. You've got some awards for your public speaking, and really developed a passion around helping people understand purpose, understand the impact of purpose both in their life and in a business setting. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Well, and you have a new book coming out in
Yes.
2025, which is exciting. And we'll touch a little bit on that today. But talking through what Tim mentioned, we both were able to attend the Purpose Summit. And so this series for Winning Through Culture has really been in the spaces of discovering people's purpose. How do they find that? What are the questions they should be asking? And then ultimately, what are some of the ways in which that comes to fruition for them? So let's hop into, where did the Purpose Summit even come from? What initiated that for you? How did you get to the place where you're like, this is what I want to do?
It's so great to be here. Thank you so much, Tim, Amanda. Thank you for coming to the summit. Thank you for offering to have me here. It's an honor to be
And we'll be there
on
next
your
year.
show. I can't wait.
right.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
You guys were one of the first ones to sign up.
Yay!
There you go. So we're excited that Charlotte is now the new foreseeable home of the Purpose Summit. I don't have any intentions of moving it again. We moved our family here to Charlotte to kind of cement that. So,
Right.
But I guess to understand, that journey, I have to answer your question, which is, how did it all begin?
Right.
So back in 2019, I had just finished a speaking tour, traveling to different states, and I met some amazing people that were talking about purpose the way that I was talking about purpose, that understand it from the power that it had. The talk back then was called The Power of Purpose. It was this idea of, if we could really help organizations understand their founding purpose story of why they started, beyond just making money, beyond delivering results, like what was the impact that they wanted to have on the world? What was the journey that they wanted to invite people to be a part of? And then if we could help people at work find what their purpose is, and then connect these two things, that my dear friend Adam Ritchie calls it closing the IO gap, the gap between individual purpose and organizational purpose, right? Okay, what does our company do? Why are we here? What's the impact we want to make? And then what are my gifts, talents, and abilities, and how do I contribute to that every day? And then have a clarity of, I'm contributing something greater than myself, and I go home feeling fulfilled in the work that I do. So that was kind of the impetus of the conversation. And so I brought together all these speakers, and we had dinner one night at Fogo de Chao in Troy, Michigan. And they had this place called the Upper Room. You can't make it up. That was the name of it. And there were 12 of us sitting around the table in the Upper Room at Fogo de Chao. So those of you who have a biblical background will understand the humor in that. But so we're sitting around this table at Fogo de Chao, and I said, we travel to all of these different conferences, and companies hire us to come talk to the companies. What would it look like if we invited people to the conversation? What if we had an event, called it the Purpose Summit, and the whole idea was, day one, let's focus on individual purpose. What is purpose? what are the questions that you ask? How do you identify that in your life, in your work, and step fully into that? And then day 2, organizational purpose. Why did we start this organization? What is the impact that we wanted to make? How are we re-inviting people to be a part of that? And how are we showing them how their gifts, talents, and abilities, their purpose, contributes to something greater than themselves? So in 2019, we basically got the band together, and we had no money, we had no marketing. It was a total grassroots effort. I have a dear friend, Chris Lambert. He runs the nonprofit track of the Purpose Summit, because there's a business track and there's a nonprofit track. There's a faith-based track, there's a life track. And he had just started a movement in Detroit that was amazing called Life Remodeled. We could talk about that another time, but he had a school building that he had just started to rent. 157,000 square foot school building, 100-year-old building, beautiful auditorium, cherry wood walls and marble ceilings and old classrooms with 100-year-old chalkboards. So we said, let's do it here. And we had, general sessions in the auditorium, breakout sessions in the classrooms, and we had a ton of companies that sponsored it and came alongside, and we turned the gymnasium into kind of a networking expo, and Fogo de Chao served lunch. It was
Really?
Yeah, it was.
I did not
that's
know that part.
appropriate.
That is
They
awesome.
literally brought the restaurant to the gym
That's so
and
cool.
set up a restaurant in the center of the gym, and all the exhibitors were around it, and so it started there. We did it 2 years in Detroit. It moved to the University of Notre Dame. There's a story behind that, which we can get to. We did 2 years at Notre Dame, and then as we approached our 5th year, God said, move it to Charlotte. And I had the question if I was hearing that correctly, but we did. And last year, you guys came to the Purpose Summit in Charlotte. And now here we are, and it's the future home of the summit for years to come.
And you did all that in 2019, and then this little pandemic rolled around.
Yeah, there was that.
Yeah.
Right?
There
was
COVID
that.
was in the
Yeah.
middle of
I was
all
gonna
that.
say.
Yeah.
But you made it through that experience.
That's right.
It came out stronger on the other side. So,
That's right.
well, let's talk about, we've talked in previous episodes and offline, but just the reflections from the event in May in Charlotte. I mean, obviously you'd had some time to do this in Detroit, and you went to University of Notre Dame, which I know was an amazing experience. I saw some of those pictures, and here you are in Charlotte. What were some of the highlights or reflections, Davin, from your perspective about how that was received here in Charlotte, and just the evolution of the summit being in a new city?
Oh my goodness. How much time do we have on the show?
As much as we want.
A couple hours,
couple
right?
hours, yeah.
Excellent.
Sure.
That's a great question. There's so many great moments. And I could point to amazing speakers that we had and things that were said.
Yeah.
But I constantly say the magic of the summit, as powerful as those talks are, isn't what happens on stage. It's what happens off stage.
Mm-hmm.
It's the relationships that are formed. It's the friendships that are forged. It's the collaborations that are born. I'm constantly watching to this day, especially on LinkedIn. There's been books that have been co-written together from people who never met each other, and they met at the summit, and now there's books
Writing a book.
that they're writing a book together. There's been companies that have been started of people who didn't know each other and left the summit and started companies together. There's been life transformation stories. There's been lives literally saved. One of my favorite stories is a story of a guy named Simon. Simon was an executive for Huntington Bank, and he came to the summit as an atheist. And we don't market the summit as a faith-based event. It's a leadership experience. We cover the gamut. There's for-profit, there's nonprofit, there's faith aspects. So all are welcome. But he came, and he was an atheist, and he was an executive for Huntington Bank. What we didn't know was he was also a depressed, raging alcoholic who had plans to take his life, and had no idea that this was where he was at. His marriage had failed. He was alienated basically from his adult special needs son, because he was so focused on his career. He was so focused on achieving success. Purpose was absent from his life, right? And at one point at Notre Dame, he was weeping in the back of the room. And a guy from my chair, Roger Norberg from C12, noticed, grabbed him, brought him over to Corporate Chaplains, which is a sponsor of the summit, and they prayed with him in the back of the room. And he gave his life to the Lord at the summit. He left the summit, quit his job, started a new company, re-engaged with his son, became sober, and now started a whole mission for for exactly that, like fathers who had left their sons and reconnecting them. I mean, like he fully embraced the conversation.
Yeah.
It altered the whole course of his life. And then he came down here to Charlotte last year. He actually lives in Michigan. He drove to our office and picked up all the stuff that we were going to have to mail to Charlotte and drove it down in his car, and then was chauffeuring me and Lisa around while we were here. And so that's like a life-changing story. But then there's like organizational changing stories. I've seen companies who are like, we've got a great culture. This is the Winning Through Culture podcast, right? We've got a great culture. We've got it all figured out. And then they come and they hear stories from WD-40 who have a 96% employee engagement rate, and Gary Ridge, the CEO who just retired from there, and how over 25 years of CEO of WD-40, they never once laid someone off in 25 years, right? They hear stories of Lippert that grow from, a $63 million company to a $7 billion company and reduce turnover by 100%. They hear stories of companies that double EBITDA by loving people, like all these different things that just seem so foreign to us. And then companies walk away from there a little bit humbled, challenged, and say, we need to do better.
Yeah.
Right. And so I've got no shortage of stories that I could share, but the overwhelming feedback in Charlotte, which was the end of your question, was well received. Everyone that I talked to said this was actually one of the most transformative leadership experiences that I've ever been to. The only complaints that we got were around some of the logistics. People didn't like bussing around Charlotte.
Yeah, moving.
We're changing that for next year.
I
It's
heard.
all in one location.
One spot.
So there's no more buses. You can come to the hotel and you can stay at the hotel for 3 days. So we heard, we listened, and we're making those corrections. But overwhelmingly, it's been well received.
Yeah, it was very impactful for me. And again, I think to your point, it was the people I met, the conversations that were had. Certainly the speakers and the material itself was great, but it really was an eye-opening, profoundly powerful experience, and still processing some of it, actually.
Oh, I mean, you sent me a letter about how your daughter was with you and just the impact that had, and that was another highlight for me, honestly. I mean, some of the biggest highlights happened after the summit in the messages that we receive, and your letter about how much that meant to you and having your daughter there with you. I literally turned around and looked at Lisa in our office. I said, this is why we do this, this right here.
So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. And I just keep going back to my notes. Like, I have a whole notebook of just like, and I like to handwrite them because I feel like, you can commit it to memory a little bit more. And so it's been a fun conversation, so much so that it was the series, genesis for this, right? Like we need to do a series based on the reflections that we had from the Purpose Summit.
Yeah, we were the second day talking, and I said, I got it. She's like, what? I'm like, this is like the launching pad for the rest of the year for Winning Through Culture, because normally we do these 3-episode kind of mini-series with a theme. And I was like, there's so much here, both to your point, Davin, on the individual side and then the business side. And that's the magic, is when you can help people in the workplace discover their purpose and their gifts and their talents and align them to what the business is doing. And obviously the business needs to be profitable and make money, or it won't be in existence and be able to fulfill its purpose. But ultimately, that there is a purpose, and you get those two things aligned, and you have a very formidable force for positive change, both in business and in people's lives. And
so true.
There's so much. I mean, the people we met, and we've already done an episode with Rebecca Holmes, and have some other people we're talking to about doing episodes to get their perspective from the summit. So, super powerful.
So
agreed.
good.
And kind of going back to the notes that I took, and of course you were on stage quite significantly throughout introducing different speakers and things of that nature, but you had a comment that just kind of stayed with me, and I'd like to explore this question a little bit further. You said, what if your what if led you to your purpose?
Yes.
So can you dig into that? Like, that's one of those questions that if you were sitting, and not everybody, of course, has had the opportunity to go to the summit just yet, but if you were sitting there thinking about, well, how do I even start that conversation with myself about what my purpose is? What if your what if could lead you there? How did that come to fruition for you?
Well, and funny thing is that was the first time I'd ever said that.
Oh, yeah?
I'd never said that before. The title of the talk, What If, that was the summit was the first time I'd ever given that. And that talk is now on YouTube. Actually, all the talks from the summit are on YouTube, so you can watch
they are?
them.
Yeah.
Good
We
to
just
know.
all the general sessions are on YouTube.
Okay.
The breakout sessions aren't uploaded yet, but you can go to YouTube to the Purpose Point station, and they're all there. But I did this talk called What If. It was the first time that I'd ever given that talk. And by the way, that like I made that decision 48 hours before giving that talk. That was not like that. The talk that I gave, even though the program said it was going to be What If, the talk that I gave was a different talk than I had
Very
planned.
different.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you were moved in a way.
Yeah, I literally in the green room the night before said I'm changing this entire talk. And that statement, what if your what if is an invitation to your purpose, is just something that came out. And then I started reflecting on what I just said. So sometimes you say things and you're like, where did that come from?
Right.
We know where it came from, but I start reflecting on it. And I've really had some time to unpack that. Earlier you mentioned the book that's coming out, and I dive into there's like pages just on that question, like what that means. But what it basically means is this, is that a lot of times, it's in the chapter on fear, and a lot of times we miss so many opportunities to step into our purpose because we're gripped with fear. And what happens is we start to tell ourselves these what if stories, like, but worst case scenarios, right?
Never a good case.
Never
Yeah.
a good case scenario. So we have this idea, or we have this desire, or this nudge, or whatever. Like there's a moment that we are meant to step into. But then all of a sudden there's this what if story that we tell ourselves that's not good, and it prevents us from stepping into it. Fear takes over and it robs us of our purpose of the moment. And the statement, what if your what if is an invitation to your purpose, is when you find yourself asking yourself what if, you find yourself telling you those stories, what if you arrest those thoughts and say, well, wait a minute, what if I change the negative outcome of this what if to a positive outcome, and start telling myself what could happen positively if I stepped into this moment? What difference could I make? What's the change that could happen? What's the impact that could happen if I choose to step into it? And then maybe even challenge yourself deeper and say, what if I don't? What's the impact that's lost? What's the difference that I'll fail to make? What are the lives that we fail to impact if we don't step into this? And so that moment was about when these opportunities come, and you start telling yourself these what if stories of all the negative things that Penn State did a whole research that 91% of the what if stories that we tell ourselves, the worst case scenarios, never come true. 91%. So if you think about that, we miss 91% of the opportunities that we should step into because of 9% of the time that something bad might happen. So we miss 91% of opportunity because of a 9% potential of a negative outcome. So what if we flip that? What if we focus on the 91% what if of what could happen? And I'm not saying to foolishly or unabashedly, run into to danger, right? But what if we arrested those thoughts and actually weighed it out and had the what if conversation? Are you focusing on the 9% what if that might happen? Or are you focusing on the 91% of positive impact and opportunity that could happen if you choose to step into those what if moments?
Well, we've had a guest speaker who is going to come back because we've just enjoyed his episode so much, and he talks about thoughts in the sense of think about them like they're on a conveyor belt. You can let thoughts just sit there and pass on by, or you can choose to pick them up. And that's really what you're saying there, right? Like you have the intentional focus of what you're choosing to tell yourself and just shifting the percentage of time that you are putting thoughts into action.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, fear is a great immobilizer, and as your upcoming book, which I love the concept of the thieves of purpose, it really, it's the opportunity to rewrite the story in your head about the what if.
That's right.
And that is a very powerful lesson that it's easy to default to fear, which leads to scarcity, which leads to inaction or shrinking away from your purpose versus, well, what if? And I think the other side of what you said, Davin, is great, which is, well, what if I didn't do it? What's that look like? because there is an element of fear of that, but it ultimately is the missed opportunities to really, truly step into who you are and what your purpose is and what your purpose is in this moment.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, I think about sometimes you need to look back at the moments you did step into and wonder if you would have given in to the fear what if, what you would have lost. And I shared that at the summit.
Yeah.
And it was basically the nature of that entire talk is I kind of like went all the way back to the origin story of the summit. And if you look from 2019 to today, there was a bunch of what if moments that we had to step into, particularly through COVID to keep it going, that it would have just been easy to give in to fear. It would have been easy to say, well, what if no one comes? You know, what if we put all this on and nothing happens? You know, what if this happens? What if there were so many what ifs that then moved to Notre Dame. There was actually a moment we had 2 successful years, the first 2 in Detroit, and then we were called to move it to Notre Dame. And we met as a team, and you know, there was this, well, wait a minute, all of our sponsors, all of our support is in Michigan. Like, this wasn't a national event at this point. Mm-hmm. Now it is. Last year we had people come from 35 states, 7 countries, 3 continents, all came to Charlotte, which was amazing.
Yeah.
Right.
But the first one, everyone was from Michigan. The second one, most people were from Michigan, and there was a couple people that came from Indiana and Ohio. But when we were called to Notre Dame, there was this big what if of, what if we go there, we lose all of the support from Michigan, we've got no sponsors, nobody comes, South Bend's hard to get to, you got to fly to Chicago, drive 2 hours, all these what if stories. Mm-hmm. But then we said, but what if they did come? And so we leaned into the positive what if. And the 3rd year of the summit, we had our biggest attendance ever. We raised the most amount of sponsorships ever. And people came from London, Italy, India, Africa. Like, we were concerned people wouldn't come from Michigan.
Right.
And they came across the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
And that's really what then legitimized the summit. And had we not made that move, I don't know if it would still exist today. And there's so many more that I could, but what that's done is when you look back at the moments where you had the courage to step into those what ifs, and then you see the positive impact and you see the opportunity loss that would have happened had you not stepped into it, then each time that you face a new what if moment, it gives you the courage to step in and to focus on, well, wait, what if this happens just like that?
Yeah.
Right? And so it really becomes kind of a flywheel, mm-hmm. right? The more what if moments that you step into, and the more that the 91% of the positive happens, the more that you'll be able to have the courage each time that those what if conversations happen to rewire yourself to step into new moments of purpose and opportunity.
How often do people that have engaged with you in some capacity, whether it's in a coaching relationship or they've heard you speak, just walk up and say, how do I find my purpose?
All the time.
All the time. What is your answer to that? Because I guarantee you that somebody that's listening to this is like, okay, I understand if I focus my energy on the what if in the positive sense that I could get there. But like, they might just have that question. Like, how do you get there?
So first I discern who I'm speaking to.
Okay.
Because sometimes it's just kind of an off-the-wall question.
Right.
And I determine, A, how much time do I have to answer this? but B, I also ask, like, how deep am I willing to go with this person? Like, mm-hmm. Are they just being polite? Is this small talk? Or, like, are they genuinely, like, help me? Mm-hmm. Right? Because depending on that depends on what I lead with. So depending on if I've got time and they want to go, if I don't have time, if it's just a surface level question, I'll just simply ask and tell me, what are you good at? What are you great at? Like, what have people told you that you is a skill set of yours or is a gift of yours that constantly shows up? You know, that people are constantly reminding you, like, hey, this is something that is unique to you. That's a gifting of yours. That every time that I think of you, I think of this. So that's the surface level question. I'll start with that. I usually will sometimes get to the latter question, which sometimes I'll lead with. If I already recognize this person is genuine, wants to go deep,
wants the help.
And that question is, what is the deepest pain that you see in the world that you think about all the time? Like, when you look at, and I'm not talking about the world, like world peace, world hunger. I mean, it could be, but when you look at the world around you, right? Whether it's your family, your company, your community, your whatever, like, what is the deepest pain point that you see that you are constantly thinking about, that you wish you could do something about, that you wish you could step into and solve that problem or alleviate that pain point. Mm-hmm. Because when you look at purpose, I've shared this before and I didn't make it up. It's been around for a long time. There's this Venn diagram of purpose. And purpose is the intersection of what you love to do, what you get paid to do, what you're great at, and what the world needs. Mm. And the problem with purpose, and everyone who's looked at this Venn diagram, because we are such selfish creatures and so self-focused, is that everyone looks at that Venn diagram and they immediately say, oh, what do I love to do? What do I get paid to do? What am I great at? How do I get paid to do what I love to do? And that's my purpose. And everyone looks at that, and that's what they focus on that.
It's logical,
right? I mean, because we've been told, hey, if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. Exactly. That is the biggest lie that's ever. I love what I do, but it's work. Right? I love speaking. I love writing. The summit is a massive amount of work.
Yeah,
right.
You're very vulnerable in that at the summit, which I appreciated.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
but I don't know where that. But because we've heard that, we believe that, and so we're like, oh, well, if I could just figure out how to get paid to do what I love to do, I found my purpose. No, it's actually those are parts of your purpose. They actually validate your purpose, but they don't help you identify your purpose. The identification happens on the west-east axis of this Venn diagram, which is what is it that you're great at that contributes to what the world needs. If you answer that and step into that, and then ask yourself, if I did this for the rest of my life, would I love it? And now if the answer to that is yes, now you have a responsibility to figure out how you can get paid to do that. But it starts with, in my opinion, first take a deep dive at what does the world around me need? What is the needs of others that we as a company can step into or that I need to step into? What are we great at? What are the gifts, talents, abilities, skill sets, resources, individually or organization that we have to meet that need? And answer that question. And now you've found the starting point of purpose. And then if you continue to do it more and more and you find joy and fulfillment and love in doing that, that's now validated that you're in your purpose. And then if you can figure out a way to monetize that, great. But that should be the last thing, right? Not the first thing.
And I'm just thinking as it relates to organizations, so leaders, entrepreneurs that might be listening to the podcast, doing that for themselves, absolutely. But then also being intentional and inspiring those that they work with that are in their community to do the same thing. But ultimately, it would need to align with the organization that they're a part of. So we have choices. Everybody has choices. You make 1 million of them a day. And so when it comes to finding your purpose, you have a choice to do that. That's right. Yes or no. You also have a choice to work for or with or alongside an organization that has also found its purpose. And then you can hopefully mesh those two things together.
That's right.
So when you think about leaders or small business owners or entrepreneurs that you have coached with, spoken to, or have asked you that question on the street, what is your advice to them as they're helping the individuals that they're supporting? So let's call it their employees or their clients. How are you helping them spark the, we should have that conversation, making sure that people are looking for and seeking their purpose or executing on their purpose if they already know what it is?
So there's 2 steps to that. The first step is to genuinely be people-focused and not company-focused. Because a lot of times what happens is we tend to proselytize purpose, right? And we will sit here and say, oh, this is great, this is fantastic. And if we do this, that will translate to better culture, better engagement, better retention, better revenue, better bottom line. And that's all true, but that's not the reason you should do it, right? Those are the outcomes. The reason that you should do it, there's a stat that drives me nuts that we've just not moved the needle on in decades. And every year, Gallup, produces this report that talks about what percentage of the people in the world are actively disengaged. I don't use the word disengaged.
Actively disengaged. Yes.
In their work.
Mm-hmm. And going out of your way.
Is in
Staggering.
the 80s every year. And what blows my mind is they'll be like, hey, employee engagement improved this year. We went from 85% of people actively disengaged to 82% actively disengaged. And we celebrate that we move the needle 3 percentage points. I'm like, am I the only one that wakes up every single day and has a problem with the fact that like 4 out of 5 people on the planet are actively disengaged in who they are and what they do every day? That's a massive problem, because if you think about it, we spend most of our waking hours at work.
Yeah.
And then what we do at work translates into who we are at home. What happens in the day, we either show up and give our best to our families, or we give them our leftovers. So the reason to do it, if I'm a leader or I'm an employer or I have people that I'm responsible for, is to recognize 2 things. Number one, it's likely that 4 out of 5 people that I'm surrounded with are actively disengaged in who they are and what they are doing. And I've got an opportunity to do something about that. To me, I asked earlier, what is the pain point that you see in the world that you want to do something about? That is the pain point in the world that I want to do something about. It is the thing that drives me and why the Purpose Summit continues to this day, right? I'm very clear it's why I jumped into this work. Do you as a leader, does that resonate with you? Does it bother you that it's possible that 4 out of 5 people wake up every day actively disengaged in who they are and what they do? And do you recognize that you've got an opportunity to do something about that? So then if you do, first is recognizing that. Then have you taken the time to stop and ask the question? Have you asked them? You know, hey, maybe it starts at the surface level of, what are your gifts, talents, and abilities? What do you feel that you're great at? And are we helping you use those here? Do you get to use those in your job and role? If not, maybe we need to find another job or role where you can use those. Or maybe actually you can use those in your job and role, and it'll actually help you do better in your job and role and help like, are you crystal clear that not just their resume and the skill sets that you hired them for because they matched the job that met the company's needs? Do you know what's under the hood? Like all the stuff and potential that's there that's not being used, that maybe if was activated would light that person up and make them fully engaged, not actively disengaged in who they are, and actually make them better in what they do, or maybe puts them in a better role that better aligns. And then if you do that, you know what happens? The overall performance of, if you did that with everybody, the team and the company improves. So start there, but don't focus on, oh, this is good for the company. Do something about the pain point that's right in front of you.
Yeah, one person at a time.
That's right.
Well, we talk a lot about looking at the person as a complete person. So you mentioned they're able to, are they giving their best self at all location points throughout the day, or is somebody getting their leftovers? And that's something that sits with me all the time when we're working with our clients and working with our employees. Like, how are we providing an opportunity, an environment for them to show up as their best self, their authentic self, and feel as though they're supported as a complete person? There are days that, let's just be real, you have bad days. Everybody does. Like, can we just embrace those and then find a way through it and actually have a conversation?
Yeah, I just, every time I hear you speak, I start thinking, I'm like, wow, the essence of what you said is, you know, look at every individual in the business, who they are, and where they could be, and be a shepherd of the people in that regard.
That's right.
And then the business itself transforms through unleashing the power of each one of those individuals.
That's right.
And that's fair to say counter to most business teachings today, or, you know, I'll call it the way the world sees business, which is the people are tools to be used by the business in order to unlock, you know, shareholder value or profit or whatnot. So how to, you know, that's why I'm sitting here thinking, all right, I totally get everything you're saying. It's exactly what I believe. And I love your Venn diagram. I've seen that years ago. And I was cycling through my own answer to that question. Sitting here, I'm like, wait a minute. But, you know, with building a great culture in a business, it really does come down to the individual people in that business being attended to as the individuals that they are.
It does, 100%. Yeah. And you said something so profound there about people being used as tools to build the business. And the question that I'm constantly asking, and this is really at the very heart of the Purpose Summit, but I'm constantly challenging leaders with this question: are you using people to build your business, or are you using your business to build people?
Yeah. And I think that's,
right? Like,
that's the essence of, yeah.
Because if you use your business to build people, your people will build your business.
Yeah.
But we get so focused on building our businesses that we forget to build our people. And the way to answer that, because like you said, it's countercultural,
Yep.
right? But what's interesting is that there's so many, not just case studies, it's not research. There's so many proven stories of brand name companies that we use every day that have gotten this equation right, that the evidence is impossible to ignore. And so it's interesting because I saw this, you may have seen this, but it's this cartoon of two cavemen and they're pulling a cart. Have you ever seen this?
With the square
With the
wheels.
square wheels
Yeah.
on
Yes.
it. And then some guy comes along
With a
and he's got
round wheel.
round wheels. He's
Yeah.
like, hey, and they're like, we're too busy, don't have time.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
keep on
Keep
going.
going.
And you laugh because you're like, if they would just stop and take the square wheels off and put the round wheels on, they would get to where they're going a lot faster and it would be a lot easier. And I look at this question the same exact way. There are so many companies that are using people to build their business and they're working hard and they're grinding and they've got high turnover and the people aren't happy because they've got square wheels on their wagon. But if they would stop and say, how are we using our business to build our people? Let's take the square wheels off. Let's put the round wheels on. The journey is going to be a lot more enjoyable for everyone, and we're going to get there faster.
A lot faster. Yeah, that's, as I was listening to you, that's the thing that I think I know from my vantage point as a business owner, tried to use the platform of the business to develop the people, knowing that in turn will develop the business.
That's right.
But it is a very countercultural dynamic in different professions and sectors that people are like, what are you doing? That's crazy. You got to focus on this. You got to focus on that. Don't worry about the people. But yeah.
Yeah, it is. But I think, and we have an opportunity. I mean, in essence, that's my mission behind the summit, is we have an opportunity to make it not countercultural.
Yeah, flip
We have
the
an
narrative.
opportunity to lead a movement of more organizations that are doing that and amplifying their stories to change that paradigm, right? And there's been several paradigms in the past that we've been able to change. So why can't we change this one? And that's why I love the reason when we do the summit and we put stories like WD-40 up there, Coca-Cola Consolidated up there, Lippert up there. I mean, brands that people recognize. If I could, I'd have Jim Sinegal from Costco up there. He's 87 years old. He's not traveling anymore. But he was one of the early pioneers of this. I mean, people would look at Costco and be like, I mean, not to degrade any other wholesale clubs that are out there for you Sam's people or whoever else, but when you look at Costco, people are just like, there's something about Costco. It's such a great company. Like, what's the difference? And the difference is Jim Sinegal had one piece of paper that was their employee handbook. One piece of paper. And it said, obey the law, take care of our employees will take care of our customers, take care of our vendors, and if we do those things, if we obey the law, take care of our employees, take care of our customers, take care of our vendors, we'll do what every company exists to do, which is reward our shareholders. And he was only focused on the people. And he used Costco as a vehicle to build the people that were in there. And they had a 2% turnover. 2. Like, it was impossible to work there because
It's unheard of.
there was like no upward mobility,
Yeah.
right? I spent 7 years there. The only reason I left was because there was nowhere to go. It was a great company, but like my career was stuck. But I loved what I learned from Jim. I loved from the company. But they built a well-oiled, highly profitable, great brand because they focused on the people.
I remember you telling a story at C12 about an encounter with Jim. Can you tell that?
Oh, it's one of my favorite stories.
That was just, I remember that. I was like, wow.
So it was 2001, so 23 years ago, in a Costco in Michigan, and I was relatively new to Costco. I had just become the marketing manager for them, and Jim had come and visited our store. His office was a lifetime table and a folding chair on the rooftop of the Costco in Issaquah, Washington, because he was never there. They literally built like a space for him upstairs, folding table, folding chair, in case he needed to like open up, a computer. I don't think laptops existed in the early 80s, but like that was his office, because he had a goal back then. There was like 288 stores, and his goal was to be in a different store every day and walk around and see people and have them feel seen, valued, and heard. and then to take the insights he got from the people and then share with those leading the company what changes they need to make. So I had heard that story, like it was, like an old wives' tale, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, come on, really? So one day he shows up in Michigan, walks in the door. He's got khaki pants on, button-down shirt, name badge that says Jim, no title on it, and walks up to me and he says, "Hi, I'm Jim. What's your name?" I knew everyone knew he was Jim, right? And he knew my name
I was like, this is not undercover boss.
This is not undercover boss. He was unmistakable and had an entourage behind him, so it wasn't like he was by himself.
Of course.
Right? And I had a name badge that said Davin, so he knew my name, but he made this personal connection. He leaned in, shook my hand, stared me in the eye, and said, "I'm Jim, what's your name?" And wanted to make that human connection.
Yeah.
And I said, "I'm Davin." And he said, "Davin, tell me, why do you work at Costco? What are we doing well? What could we be doing better?" And I mean, that was a well better before, like Lipper, and you hear Amber at the summit talk about well betters. I mean, he was doing well betters 30 years ago. So what are we doing well? What could we be doing better? And I'm like, why are you asking me? Like, first of all, I've been here for like 2 years. I'm a new marketing manager. Like, there's a bunch of people who've been here for like 20 that you should be asking that question to. So I told him, but then he asked me this question, and this was the one that got my attention. He said, "Davin, what are your goals and dreams? And by working at Costco, are we going to help you fulfill those?" And that question upended my world, because I'm thinking, here's the CEO of a very well-established company. He's very busy. He's got all these people behind him. I mean, there's a lot to do, but he wanted to know if by me working at his company, if using his business was going to help build his people, if it was going to help me achieve my goals and dreams. And I never forgot, like, that seed, I never forgot that moment. That seed, like, upended my world of this is how companies should be leading business, right? And from that point forward, I learned from that moment in every leadership role that I ever was in to take the time to make people feel seen, valued, and heard, and to know that not only do their voice matters, but that they belong, and that we have an opportunity to help use what we've had to help them fulfill their goals and dreams.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, like, let's be honest. Tim and I talk about this a lot, and we use our daily experiences, right, to really show how these things come to life. Concepts, you can talk about things theoretically, but like, we live this on a daily basis. And you literally took the words out of my mouth. Like, that's it.
Drop the mic.
That drop the mic. Yeah, that's one of those drop the mics.
Wait, but we've got so much more to talk about.
I know, but yeah, like, it's one of those things for me.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
No, I appreciate you sharing that story, because the day you came to our group, heard that story and I was like, wow. I mean, that's ultimately, if you really want to have a transformational business, create a winning culture, the whole theme of this podcast, it's going to be by unleashing the potential and talent in the individuals that work there every day, helping them have their best life ever, helping them achieve what's important to them, and seeing that the opportunity they have to do all that right there in that setting that, as you said earlier, everybody spends most of their waking hours at work if you're working full time, and you can be very transformational and impactful as a business if that's what you make the focus.
That's right. And my friend Gary Ridge says all the time, he goes, "It's easy, but it's not simple."
No.
Because it's countercultural.
Yeah.
We're not wired that way. We're wired to go, 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 go. We are very, very rarely present in the actual moments that we're in. Mm-hmm. We're usually almost all of the time thinking about the next moment that we're supposed to be in, rather than being present in the moment that we're in.
Or the device on our wrist or in our pocket.
Right, exactly.
So many distractions.
But all of that. And so if we choose to be more present in those moments as leaders, then the easier that becomes. And, we did an event since this is the Winning Through Culture podcast, we did an event 2 years ago in San Diego called the Culture Forum. And it was a mini version of the summit. It was 100 people, very intimate, San Diego State University. And there's a clip on YouTube that I shared the same story about Jim for people to watch that again. But I entitled that The Present Leader, because that's what Jim was. He was a present leader. There was a lot to do, a lot of things he could be thinking about. Are we on time? Where are we going next? Has that end cap right? Is whatever. Mm-hmm. But he was fully present to the person that was in front of him.
That person.
And the more that we could be present in the moment, the more that we can be present with the people that we're with, both at work and at home, the more that we can step into those opportunities of purpose in those moments.
The gift of the presence.
That's right.
So what's next for Purpose Summit 2025?
So 2025, I'm excited about 2025. I think
it's big.
It's going to be big. I'm really excited about it. I've been here for 4 weeks in Charlotte, and I think I've met with like 10 people this week alone who I'd never met before, who were just so excited. They heard about the summit. They didn't come last year. They couldn't come. Now they're coming this year. While the summit has become, kind of a national and global draw for purpose-driven leaders, now that we've moved our family here, I'm really excited to kind of, make the summit synonymous with Charlotte. They're like something that Charlotte is proud of, and almost like this is the place that people come each year to sharpen the saw, to re-engage with their purpose professionally and personally, for companies to re-engage with their purpose. Because here's the thing, it's like a an alignment on a car, right? The more you drive it, the more it goes out of alignment. And you got to take it in, tune in. So in many ways, the vision for the Purpose Summit is to become the annual alignment, right? For yourself, for your organization, and to connect those dots. Because ultimately, it doesn't matter how many great speakers come to the summit, how many great sessions that we do, how many great takeaways that we package for you. You're ultimately going to leave the summit, go back to
the chaos,
and you're going to fall out of alignment. I would love if that didn't happen.
That's not real.
That's not realistic. That's going to happen. So for me, the vision is that the Purpose Summit becomes, the realignment event for purpose leaders and purpose cultures that are out there. There'll be a lot of returning faces from last year. Gary will be back.
Oh, good.
Nick Craig will be back. There'll be a lot of new faces that Amber will be back emceeing with me, but there'll be a lot of new faces that people haven't seen. We are moving it this year to the Sheraton Le Meridian complex, which is the old Omni uptown, and we've got both towers. But once they're sold out, they're sold out. So if people are going, they need to get their rooms now before they're gone. But everything will be right there on campus. We're not going to have buses taking people different places. We're looking at 2026 venues already because I don't think the Sheraton Le Meridian complex will hold us beyond this year.
I love it.
And so we're looking at some other
options. It's a big complex, so I like the big thinking.
It's a big complex. And we've taken over the whole complex. So there's we'll have the capacity for this year, but I don't think that it'll hold us after this. And so there's a couple of things we're looking at. We're in talks with Bank of America about, what's the timeline on their renovations for Bank of America Stadium. The summit was held at Notre Dame Stadium for 2 years, inside, not in the stadium.
Right.
But they're building some amenities onto Bank of America that might provide for bigger capacity. We're looking at UNC Charlotte campus.
Great.
So we're looking at some things for 2026. But 2025 in May, it'll be, it's the same week as the PGA event here in Charlotte, which is great. We intentionally did that. So you can come in on Monday and go to the summit Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then go to the PGA Tour Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's
perfect.
Gonna be a great week in Charlotte.
Get a couple golfers
sharpen
to
your
speak early
culture
on.
and go do that. So it'll be a powerful week to be in Charlotte. So, but the vision, the ultimate vision, is that the summit ultimately reverberates beyond Charlotte and into the hearts of the leaders that attend it, and they take it back to their organizations. And then we start seeing more organizations coming alongside of each other and leading this movement to reverse the 85% of people who are disengaged at work. Let's flip the script.
Yep.
Let's turn it around so that more and more companies, it's not countercultural, more and more companies are focusing on the purpose of their people, tying that to the purpose of their business, and helping people feel fulfilled at work, and then experiencing the fruits of that by seeing winning cultures, winning results that are sustainable, and that they don't have to work so hard for.
I don't know if there's anything more to say.
I know.
I mean, we could talk for a long time.
We certainly could.
I'm
Yeah.
at your disposal. So whatever more content you want to capture, I'm here. I'm good till 2:00, so we can keep going.
There's some days there are episodes that go quite long. Yes,
Yeah, no, I mean, I just, I really commend you, Davin, for answering the call you got.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know from talking to you and hearing part of the story you told the first night of the Purpose Summit, you made a lot of personal sacrifices.
Yeah.
You've put a lot out on the line, and if you're okay, I'd love to maybe just take a minute to
Yeah.
talk about, this all is wonderful, but you said it and it's true. Anything worthwhile is hard work.
That's right.
There's no easy button other than on TV or Staples maybe. It's hard work. And what would be your encouragement to people that are pursuing their purpose and do feel aligned with that, yet are meeting the natural resistance that comes from achieving anything great?
Well, I think it's embracing the hard, right? I mean, when you think back, if you look at history, all of the people that we appreciate and celebrate are the ones that had to go through tremendous trial and tribulation
Yeah.
to either become who they were meant to become or achieve what they were supposed to achieve. And it's the story that they overcome that made them great. Those are the stories that we tell. And so what's interesting is that we live in a world that people are constantly aspiring to greatness. They want to be popular, they want to be known, they want the followers, they want their name in lights, they want all those things. But they don't want the hardship that comes.
Yeah, they want the prize without the work.
They want the prize without the work, right? And but if you look back, I mean, there's no greatness in a story that's like, oh yeah, Davin started this great Purpose Summit thing out of a dinner at Fogo de Chao. Everything went exactly as planned.
Not a hitch.
I mean, it became an awesome conference that did a lot of great things. It was seamless. There's no inspiration in that. In fact, there would be a lot of resentment in that for a lot of people. But then when you start to tell the stories, I mean, I don't mind sharing this on this podcast. I can't, with every single year, 2019, 2020, during COVID, 2021, 22, 23, and then even last year, every year I looked at myself in the mirror and said, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Why am I putting my family through this? This is just too much. It's too hard. It's too much of a sacrifice. It's too much mental bandwidth, emotional bandwidth, physical bandwidth, spiritual bandwidth. I mean, but like you said earlier, right, there are so many worthwhile things worth fighting for. And when you want to give up, you have to be clear about why you started in the first place. You got to be clear about what it is you're fighting for and who it is you're fighting for. And when you're clear on those three things, when you're clear on why you started in the first place, of what you're fighting for and who you're fighting for, every single time that the hard gets hard, I mean really hard, and you're tempted to give up, you will find the strength to keep fighting forward. And that's what this summit has been. The summit's never been a profitable event. No one's making money off of this thing. It's not. I've shared this before. Our family has personally had to actually divest ourselves to keep the summit going.
Keep it going.
Because we believe so much in it. I mean, I shared this with you actually in our pre-game here on this, that I was excited to move to Charlotte because I was coming to something. I had relationships that I had met here from the summit. We have one summit under our belt here in Charlotte, and it felt good, and I can see the vision of what it can do. But my family, we left our home that we built, that our kids, it was the only home they ever knew. We left our church that we spent 20 years in, that I led worship in, and my wife led children's ministry in, and all of our relationships were there. I mean, literally, we left our entire ecosystem, and I asked them to move to a city they've never been to, that they know no one in, a home they've never seen, and haven't found a church yet. We'll find that eventually. But they believe so much that this is what we've been called to, that they said, okay, let's go, right? In fact, in our mudroom is a verse from Ruth that says, where you go, I'll go. And it's just a reminder every single day as we leave the door that we're supposed to be here. It wasn't about what we were supposed to achieve for ourselves, what we were supposed to gain, what we were supposed to accomplish. It was about what we were supposed to surrender, what we were supposed to let go of, to fully step into the purpose that we were called to. And often what happens is people aspire to great purpose, they aspire to greatness, they aspire to do great things that change the world, but they're not willing to let go of something. They're not willing to surrender. They're not willing to do the hard work. They're not willing to sacrifice. And this isn't meant to pat me or my family on the back or to be some sort of sob story, but I would challenge you. I would challenge you to go back through history and look at all the great people that we memorialize and that we talk about and that we quote. And I would challenge you to find one without the struggle.
You won't.
You won't.
Yeah.
Yeah, you won't. I mean, my story is similar to yours in coming to Charlotte 21 years ago. And, when you answer the call, it's hard. And there will be sacrifices, and you will, I know for me, had moments of doubt as you shared, looking in the mirror, like, what am I doing here? And I think in large part, I've had a saying I've used for years, which is the hard way becomes the easy way becomes the hard way. Right. As a reminder, there's a few variations of that, but we'll just leave it at that for the podcast. But, at the end of the day, anything great you're going to pursue is going to have hardship in it.
That's right.
And I have always believed that when those moments of quitting, of like, I don't know if I can do this anymore, come, it's a pretty good validator that you're actually probably on the right path.
That's right.
You just got to dig a little deeper,
That's right.
Get a little more courage, find a little bit more of a support system around yourself, and then step into that fear. And greatness is on the other side of that.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So I appreciate you sharing that story, because I think that's the other side of this. To your point, Davin, is, if you're pursuing your purpose, the lights are not all green for, the next 5 miles.
That's right.
There's going to be all kinds of things that come in the way. And I think, to your point, unfortunately, our society is very kind of instant gratification now. And, people see these influencers that are, whether they're successful or not, I'm not passing any judgment on that, but it's just like, I just have to do this or that and I'll be successful. And it'll be without hardship, it'll be without struggle. And to your point, I cannot think of any story of an individual in history that's inspiring to others that came just with easy street.
That's right. Doesn't exist.
No.
And so when you're facing the hard, when you're facing the sacrifice,
Yep.
when you're facing the moments that you want to quit, I do believe that those are moments that are validation that you're on the right path. And quitting is one of the chapters, and it's one of the thieves of purpose.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many missed opportunities there are because someone was so close.
This close.
So close. There's so many stories, right? There's the images of the gold miner, and like he dug this long tunnel, and just like one more hit. And
Acres of diamonds.
Acres of diamonds. There's, the story of swimming the English Channel in the fog, and couldn't see, and turned around and went back to shore, and they were already more than halfway there. I mean, there's so many stories of, oh my gosh, had I just kept going.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this and you're feeling like, it's just too hard, you want to quit and it's not worth it, I would just encourage you to keep going, because like you just said, Tim, it's validation that you're probably digging deep into your purpose.
And you're on the right path.
That's right.
Maybe it's the what if I keep going?
What if I keep going?
What if I keep going?
That's right. So good.
So good.
So good.
Yeah. Well, Davin, it was a pleasure. Thanks for being with us today. I have lots to reflect on still. Like every time Tim said, like the stories that you share, every time I hear you, I'm like, cool, all right, I need to take that in, process it a little bit, and see how we can show up better.
Thank
the
you
goal.
so much.
Yeah.
That means the world to me. Truly honored to be with you guys today. Honored you came to the summit last year. Honored you're coming back this year.
That's right.
I look forward to more
Got
conversations
a whole table.
together.
Whole table.
I'm so excited that you have a whole table.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
But thank you for the work that you're doing with Winning Through Culture and inspiring more companies to get this right. Anytime I come across people who share the same vision and mission and that are stepping into it, it's hard work. It's not easy work.
No.
And so I know that you
Very
guys are
hard
leaning
work.
in. It's really hard work. So thank you for your perseverance and your
thank you.
steadfastness in it.
Yeah.
That's kind. Thank you.
Really appreciate you being with us, and look forward to seeing the impact you and the Purpose Summit's going to continue to have in this community and beyond. So welcome to Charlotte.
That's
Thank
right.
you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Winning Through Culture,
Until next time, stay intentional, be impactful.
because your culture matters.